All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Katie Baker, and I am here today on behalf of the Virginia Public Sector Labor Coalition. Collectively, we represent hundreds of thousands of workers across the Commonwealth, and we are made up of Virginia AFL-CIO, AFSCME, the American Federation of Teachers, AAUP, which represents our university professors, the Communications Workers of America, which includes the United Campus Workers, SEIU Virginia 512, the Virginia Education Association, the Virginia Professional Firefighters, Unite Here, and the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 400. And I know a lot of you have been following this historic legislation that has been moving through the General Assembly this year that will grant more than half a
Bags and
million
other
of
luxury
Virginia.
items. It must have been a big case because that
If
seemed,
folks could mute,
well,
please.
just about the sentencing.
That would grant more than half a million of Virginia's public sector workers the freedom to collectively bargain for things like their wages and their working conditions, including firefighters, teachers, home care workers, and some higher ed workers. Particularly, there is a narrow definition of service worker in the legislation for higher ed workers that are included. However, through the course of the legislation being negotiated, a huge segment of our higher ed workers, our professors, our graduate workers, our adjuncts, and pretty much a lot of the campus professional staff has been left out of having that voice on the job in this bill. That is a result of university presidents who have been lobbying against their own workers having a voice on the job. So, we're here today to highlight why it's so important that all of our higher ed workers have the freedom to join a union and bargain collectively for their contracts. And we're respectfully calling on the governor, Abigail Spanberger, to please issue an amendment before the April 13th action deadline to put all of the higher ed workers back in. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, who is Professor Brandy Faulkner from Virginia Tech. Professor.
Good morning, everyone. I am Brandy Faulkner, and I'm Vice President and a member of United Campus Workers Virginia and a faculty member at Virginia Tech. I love my job. Helping to shape the students who are the future of this Commonwealth and beyond is undeniably an honor for me, one that I have cherished for nearly 20 years. Over the past few days, I have listened to so many national and international conversations about unchecked power. But we are far less likely to have those same conversations about unchecked power in our workplaces. My job is getting harder. Centralized power in universities across Virginia has created a culture of fear. It has closed the door on shared governance, and it's hindering faculty's ability to teach, to support, and to develop our students in the way that they deserve. Resolutions are being drafted and passed by unelected and unrepresentative partisan boards of visitors that will change the quality of public education in our state for many years to come. Just last week at Virginia Tech, a resolution was written to dismantle living learning programs, which will affect well over 1,000 current students. Yet they have no vote and very little voice. Faculty's academic freedom is under attack. A deeply important and necessary tradition in higher education is being eroded under the guise of time, place, and manner restrictions as administrators try to tightly control how we can exercise our freedom of speech. Faculty are being disciplined without due process hearings. I am one of them. And my colleagues have been pushed out the door or have had unfavorable tenure decision outcomes for no other reason than exercising their free speech. Things would look a lot different if we had union reps. And as professors walk the halls and lament the state of public education, there's this dystopian conclusion that this is just where we are right now. I don't accept that, and I want collective bargaining. I want collective bargaining because it will change those power relationships and shift that power back to the faculty, the staff, and the students. And it also will increase administrator accountability. Collective bargaining will help to protect our most vulnerable people in our university work environments by ensuring fair and good faith negotiations in our policy decisions and in our workplace conditions and our employment terms. We are calling on Governor Spanberger to protect the quality of public education by including higher education faculty and graduate students in the collective bargaining legislation that has been sent to her desk. We can't afford another partial restoration of rights. Public sector employees work really hard, and we're committed to the values of public education and the public good. We're just asking for the same respect in our work environments. So let's keep supporting all aspects of public education, including our faculty, as we keep serving the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. And next, we will have Andy Knighting from UVA. Andy.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay, fabulous, perfect. Thanks so much for being here and taking the time to talk with us. Ignore my surroundings. I am actively at work right now. So I'm in my truck, I'm in my work truck, and I'm all swagged out with my UVA gear. Um, I've so as Katie introduced me, my name's Andy Knighting, and I'm a recycling worker at the University of Virginia. And I'm also an active member of our union, the United Campus Workers of Virginia. And I'm here because I'm proud of the work that I do. I'm proud to be a recycling worker. I'm proud of my department, and I'm proud to work in higher ed. I know we deserve a fair and democratic workplace. And I also know that we need a fair and democratic workplace in order to provide the best education to students, in order to be a good neighbor to Charlottesville and Albemarle County, and in order to raise the standards we have for institutions of higher education. If you don't know about our union, we are a wall-to-wall union, meaning we organize across job category. I organize with grad workers, faculty, and staff that aren't in the same department as me. And the power that we build when we work together is precisely why we organize in this fashion. Working together is not just powerful, but it also breaks down assumptions and misconceptions that we have about other types of work in higher ed. I used to feel very separate from any sort of class instructors like professors and grad workers. But when I joined the living wage campaign, my expectations were blown out of the water. Instead of feeling inferior or lesser than these other workers, organizing put us in the same room together and put us at the table together to work towards a common goal. I found understanding with these people, workers I originally assumed would be fairly compensated, were actually struggling in similar ways to me and my coworkers. I found people that recognized the injustice of being underpaid in one of the most expensive counties in Virginia, and they were committed to showing up to change it. Whether it was at our town hall last summer to provide their experiences working, being underpaid, or showing up to march alongside us during the first snow of the year, mind you. Again and again, these workers show up to our workplaces. We show up to our community, and it's about time that our commitment is honored by restoring collective bargaining rights to everyone in higher ed, including the professors, including the grad workers, and staff that don't fit under this narrow definition of service work, which includes my job. It shouldn't just be people who are considered service that get these rights restored back to them. It's going to take all of us in order to make our workplaces better. And that's why Governor Spanberger needs to send this bill back with the amendments to include everyone. Back to you, Katie.
Thank you so much, Andy. And next we will have Janet Dandridge, who is a artivist, an educator, and adjunct professor at GMU. Janet.
Thank you, Katie. And Andrew, we are all service workers. All of us are giving service, right? So thank you for that. Appreciate it. And thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being here. I've been working in higher education, teaching in the arts for 5 years. I started when I was pregnant with my son. As I read my first contract fully pregnant, I was excited to have a steady job that would help in this next stage of my life. However, as I've learned over the last 5 years of 9 contracts, the job is not steady. It is not secure. It is the epitome of precarity. How do I manage the finances of family life without knowing if I'll have a job every 4 months? At George Mason University, adjunct faculty does not have medical benefits, no promotional pathways, no voice in the faculty senate. Adjunct faculty contracts are semester-based, and classes for adjuncts can be canceled up to a week prior to the beginning of a semester with no remuneration for lesson planning. As of November 2025, Mason's Office of Institutional Effectiveness and Planning recorded 1,238 adjunct faculty members at Mason. That's roughly 46% of instructional faculty. According to Mason's website, a full-time out-of-state first-year student's annual tuition is roughly $36,000. In 2025, I taught 2 classes per semester, so a total of 4 classes for the academic year. My annual income before taxes was about $16,600. $16,600. And I was teaching an average of 15 students per class. Mason has the revenue, but chooses not to give it to the people who are the backbone of the university. What this illustrates is that the university cares nothing of my basic needs and cares nothing of the fact that I must support myself and my son. Governor Spanberger, I deserve better. All faculty deserve better. We have chosen to teach generations of humans to guide them in learning and evolving. We are dedicated public sector workers. We serve our communities with care. We need to have the leverage to legally fight against unjust labor practices, to receive long-term contracts, to receive benefits, to receive compensation for canceled classes. Show Virginians that you care. Show educators that you care. Establish collective bargaining as law for all higher education workers. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Janet, for sharing your story. And next, we will have Professor Walt Heinecke from UVA.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Walt Heinecke. I'm a tenured associate professor at the University of Virginia. I don't speak for my institution. I would like to say from my perch as a tenured faculty member that all higher education workers, service workers, graduate students, all faculty, including tenured faculty, deserve collective bargaining rights. Tenure is supposed to be about the right to teach and research and produce knowledge, regardless of political control. Higher ed and academic freedom are under attack by the Trump administration and other political entities, even within the Commonwealth. The independence of institutions of higher education are being undermined. This threatens our democracy. Colleges and universities are not administered as people think. They are increasingly more top-down in management, subject to political interference, and tenure is no longer what it was. Many tenured faculty don't feel that they have a voice in authentic shared governance. Many are afraid to speak out for fear of retaliation. This undermines academic freedom. Tenured faculty need collective bargaining to protect academic freedom. You cannot have academic freedom without shared governance, and collective bargaining strengthens shared governance via participation about working conditions related to curriculum and instruction. Around the nation, tenured faculty are getting fired without cause and without due process. For example, in December, administrators at the Virginia State University fired 5 tenured faculty professors without cause or due process. This is an example of why tenured faculty in the Commonwealth need collective bargaining. Collective bargaining would have prevented this. What happened last year at UVA was an assault on academic freedom and has continued into this year. Those assaults have not been adequately addressed by administrators. This is another illustration of why, now more than ever, tenured faculty need collective bargaining rights. Collective bargaining creates the conditions that allow tenured faculty to act as an equal partner and as a check and balance for curricular decision making related to academic freedom. For instance, at UVA, the president at UVA, Jim Ryan, probably would not have been ousted if faculty had authentic involvement in governance through collective bargaining. The selection of a new president would not have been controversial if faculty had had collective bargaining rights. The continuing pall over the curriculum that we're experiencing even today would have been challenged and would be challenged if we had collective bargaining. Why do tenured faculty need collective bargaining? To strengthen faculty decision making in department, school, university decisions about academic quality. Tenured faculty are becoming the exception across the Commonwealth. We need to reverse this trend, and collective bargaining will help that process. We need collective bargaining for tenured faculty to support working conditions of all other types of faculty. We are one faculty. Faculty working conditions are students' learning conditions. Collective bargaining would enhance this. Thank you so much, and we respectfully call on the governor to amend the collective bargaining bill legislation to put all higher education workers back in the bill. Academic freedom is at stake, and I think the governor knows this.
Thank you so much, Professor. And with that, I want to go ahead and open it to questions from press. We're only taking questions from press today. If you're a reporter, you could either drop your question in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you just because I know we've got a lot of folks here today. And any questions? I don't see anybody with their hand up. Feel free to unmute yourself if you're a reporter and you have a question. Tyler Englander has a question. Tyler, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. I spoke with Senator Survell, who wrote the Senate version of the collective bargaining bill this morning. He says he supports the governor amending the legislation to include all higher education workers, but is not sure if the House would support that. Has anyone had any discussions with House leadership or House lawmakers that represent them about whether this type of change would pass the House?
Taylor, I would say conversations are certainly happening, and we are publicly putting out this request that we would like to see that bill amended to include all of higher ed. So it's our hope that it will be and that it would pass the General Assembly on a reconvened session. And it looks like question from Allie Pitchin. Could you speak to Virginia universities speaking in favor of the carve-outs? Yeah, Allie, so we do have knowledge from some folks who have let us know that these university presidents are lobbying behind closed doors and asking for their workers to be excluded from this legislation. In terms of what I can publicly share, I do know the professor of or the president of CNU told one of our professors who is not on this call today, but she has publicly stated that her president flat out admitted to her face that they were lobbying against the bill. And then I defer if any of our speakers from universities have anything you want to add to that, you can, but certainly don't have to. Harry?
VCU Health shared in a recorded meeting that they had raised concerns with the bill as well.
Thank you. All right. And then it looks like we have a question from Megan Polly. Look, I would say conversations are happening with the administration. I can't speak specifically to their nature, but it is our hope that that our higher ed workers will all be added back into this legislation as the conversations continue to be happening. Anybody else? Raise your hand or drop it in the chat if you have a question and you're a member of press. All right. Well, I think that
Jay Hart had a question.
Oh, Jay Hart, I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead.
Experience. Yeah, and fortuitous that you mentioned it, Professor. Expound just a little bit more about how you feel that the Jim Ryan situation would not have happened if there had been collective bargaining. Of course, he's an administrator. The action was done by the Board of Visitors, but kind of expound upon how the collective bargaining might have mitigated or interrupted or whatever that particular situation.
I can speak to that just briefly. I think the AUP has a set of principles that are about the effective governance of universities, and it includes collaboration amongst three primary collaborators at the university, and that is the Board of Visitors, the governing board, the president, and the faculty. And you can't have real shared governance unless if there's asymmetry in terms of the input and the decision-making authority that each of the partners has. And I think in this situation that you're referring to, Jay, that if the faculty through collective bargaining had a stronger voice in decision making, that probably would have influenced the way that decision rolled out and his support or lack of support that he received.
Thank you, Professor. And last call from any questions from press. And if you are interested in connecting with any of our speakers or have further questions for me afterward, we would be happy to accommodate that. But thank you all so much for.
Yep.
Sorry,
It looks
Katie.
like Ethan
Oh.
Hunt has a question.
Oh, Ethan, please. Roanoke Times.
Yeah,
Thank you, Julie.
yeah, I have a similar question for Professor Faulkner, in that I'm hoping she can provide a little more detail on how collective bargaining would combat some of these recent decisions by the Board of Visitors. For example, the living learning decision, that the resolution that they rolled out last week.
Is Professor Faulkner still on? I think she had something she had to hop off for, which is why we let her go first. But Ethan,
Gotcha.
I'm gonna try to connect her with you later today if she's available. And then Harry, I see your hand is up.
I can give a short answer, but you should definitely talk more to Brandy.
Great.
So job security is huge in us being able to actually retain academic freedom. If we had contracts that protected our jobs and secured due process for us, we would have a lot more power in our universities to advocate for the needs of our students. I think that a lot of what's been happening over the last year is that faculty have been, strongly discouraged through threats against their jobs from speaking up when their students' needs aren't being met.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. And Ethan, I'll connect with you afterward and see if we can connect you to Professor Faulkner. All
Great.
right. Anybody else? Julie, am I missing anybody? I don't want to miss anybody's questions.
Oh, looks like Megan Polly from VPN has another question.
Sure, Megan. Somewhat technical. Can you speak to what groups like campus workers are allowed to do now versus what they're not allowed to do? I think your biggest question, I think the core of that is that they can't collectively bargain for a contract. Harry, did you want to speak to that, or any of the other UCW workers on want to speak to that?
I could address this if that's helpful. So, right now we have the right to organize under the First Amendment. However, because of actions taken against UVA hospital workers in the 1940s, universities are not permitted to recognize us as a bargaining agent, which means that we can't send a representative or elected body of representatives to negotiate for a shared contract with management. Um, we are still able to advocate for the needs of our members. We're still able to campaign. We're still able to assemble. The university just has to not directly acknowledge us, and that's what we are hoping to get with the restoration of this right.
Thanks, Harry. Okay, Megan says thanks. All right, so I think with that, we are going to wrap it up here. If you do have any other questions afterwards or want to connect with any of our speakers, just feel free to reach out to me. And thank you all for taking the time today. Take care.